You've got one day in Boston, maybe a long layover before you catch a flight out of the country from Logan Airport. What do you do while you're here? Let's dive in. To start your day, walk to the nearest Dunkin. You're probably thinking, what if there isn't a Dunkin within walking distance to me? Well, I've got good news. This is Boston, and there are Dunkins everywhere. Like, seriously, it's insane how close they can get to each other while remaining crowded and in business. I realize Dunkin is a chain, and you might be able to get it in your part of the country or world, but this is the true Bostonian experience. Boston really does run on Dunkin. You might be in search of a more quaint coffee house, and actually one of my gripes with the Boston metro area is that I haven't discovered a surplus of coffee shops. They exist, but there aren't as many local coffee places as you'd expect for a city the size of Boston. While there are apparently some bureaucratic challenges to opening a business in Boston, I posit that the dominating presence of Dunkin makes it tough for coffee competitors. Bostonians would rather have Dunkin. Disclaimer, I personally don't believe that Dunkin coffee is anything special, but I appreciate it for what it is, and I've come to realize after living here for a while that this is a special place for people who have lived in Boston for a long time. Walk the streets with Dunkin in hand to get the real experience. So now that you've got your Dunkin, make your way to downtown Boston to get the tour of the city started. Here's the thing, Boston's Metro line, aka T, is actually the first activity of the day because riding the T is an experience in and of itself. Bostonians have a love-hate relationship with the T. After a couple of decades of mismanagement, funding cuts, and other issues, the current T isn't the greatest public transportation system that I've ever ridden. Cars are old, they squeak on the Green Line especially, they often run late, even in off-peak hours when you think they'd be on time. One train actually caught fire a year or so ago, and like public transportation in a lot of other cities, you can have yourself a time people watching. However, the T will get you where you need to go, and at a reasonable cost. Subway rides are $2.40 one way, no matter how far you are going. Prices for commuter rail rides on more traditional trains are based on distance, and the cost is reasonable. Furthermore, the T has come under new leadership in the past year from the same guy who fixed the Long Island Railroad, and function has started to improve, albeit slowly. Anyways, get on whichever T line is closest to you and make your way downtown to get started on the first tour of the city. If you're on the Green Line or Red Line, get off at the Park Street T station. If you're on the Blue Line, get off at the Government Center T station. And if you're on the Orange Line, get off at the Downtown Crossing T station. Note, even if you don't want to stay downtown for cost purposes, you should definitely make your life a lot easier and try to stay in a hotel within walking distance of a metro line. All subway lines lead to downtown, and all commuter rail lines lead to the North Station or South Station, which in turn put you on the subway. Renting a car and trying to drive and park downtown can be frustrating. Boston drivers have a reputation for being massholes on the road, and I found this to be very much a true stereotype. You have to keep your head on a swivel while driving here. Additionally, since Boston's downtown roads were designed before the invention of automobiles, the street layouts don't make a ton of sense even to locals. To make matters more frustrating, parking downtown can be quite pricey and even more expensive than round-trip tickets on the metro. Do yourself a favor and use public transit instead of paying for a rental car plus parking while visiting Boston. So once you get downtown, unless you got food from Dunkin, you're probably going to be a bit hungry. The good news is that the downtown Boston area has quite a few grab-and-go options for breakfast. I can just about guarantee that there will be a Tate near you. Tate is a local Boston chain that will offer up a delicious pastry or sandwich at a reasonable price. I quite enjoy eating there, and if you want more coffee, a Tate latte is a great option. There's also Cafe 26 and frankly any other chain breakfast you can imagine or want, so grab some food and head to the next stop in the Boston Common. So you've got food and coffee in your system and you've learned to navigate the T like a true Bostonian. Next, I recommend going on a Freedom Trail tour. The Freedom Trail is a 2.5-mile red brick path that takes you through 16 significant historical sites in American history. It's wild how so many iconic moments in American history happen so close to each other. Sites on the Freedom Trail include landmarks such as the Massachusetts State House, Paul Revere's house, the Old North Church, and the spot of the Boston Massacre. The Freedom Trail also takes you by some other places that, while not officially landmarks on the trail, have an interesting history, such as the famed Omni Parker House, which, in addition to creating the Boston cream pie and Parker House rolls, also had frequent guests, residents, and/or employees such as Ralph Waldo Emerson, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, Charles Dickens, Malcolm X, John Wilkes Booth, and of course JFK, who proposed to Jackie at table 40 in Parker's restaurant inside the hotel. Tours start at the Boston Common, which is why you need to head downtown first. You can find the station where you buy tickets to catch one of these popular walking tours, which are led by trained tour guides in historical garb. These tours are about 1.5 to 2 hours in length and capture most but not all of the sites on the Freedom Trail. These tours might be the most popular in all of Boston, and they leave every 30 minutes, but it's still a good idea to book tickets in advance during peak travel season. They've been known to sell out. The tour of the Freedom Trail will conveniently end at Faneuil Hall, which is right next to Quincy Marketplace. These two spots are what you should check out next. Faneuil Hall has served as an open forum meeting hall and marketplace for more than 270 years. It came to fame during the American Revolutionary period as being a significant meeting place for Bostonians. This is where Sam Adams and other members of the Sons of Liberty encouraged independence from Great Britain. Admission to Faneuil Hall is free and current hours are 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Faneuil Hall won't take a long time to visit. It's actually not that big, so when you're done, walk right next door to Quincy Market. Quincy Market has been a continuous marketplace since it opened in 1826. Today, the market houses many food options, so you can get some authentic taste of Boston in one spot, whether that's lobster, chowder, or cannoli. This would make for a quick and convenient lunch stop during your stay. I would recommend you save cannoli for our next stop though. Once you get done with Quincy Market, I recommend you take a short walk over to the North End, Boston's Little Italy. The North End happens to be Boston's oldest residential community, which has been inhabited since the 1630s. As the name implies, the neighborhood had a period of time, specifically starting in the 1890s, where there was an influx of Italian immigrants. That influence remains through today, where there are still a ton of Italian coffee shops, restaurants, and bakeries. Speaking of bakeries, I highly recommend that you get some cannoli while walking through this neighborhood. The three most popular cannoli places in the North End are Mike's, Bova's, and Modern. People are incredibly passionate about which place has the best cannoli. In my opinion, they're all good. Mike's are the largest, which can be good or bad depending on your tolerance for sweets and the room in your stomach. I recommend that you go ahead and try all three and make the choice on your own. The North End is a beautiful neighborhood. It's picturesque, it's charming. It makes you feel almost as if you aren't even in America anymore. Even if you don't get any cannoli, strolling through the North End is definitely worth your time. If you time it right, you might run into a procession for the Feast of St. Anthony or the Fisherman Feast that tend to happen throughout the month of August. Oh, and don't forget to walk by Paul Revere's house and the Old North Church, one if by land, two if by sea. From the North End, you should make your way to the Boston Tea Party Ships and Museum, but the path to get there is its own activity. This will give you the chance to explore the Greenway. The Greenway is a modern engineering marvel. This 1.5 mile long park used to be an elevated highway that split the downtown area in two. After a decade of planning, it took another 15 years of construction under a project called the Big Dig to reroute the elevated highway below ground. While the Big Dig was controversial in its time, it was riddled with cost overruns, schedule delays, design flaws, water leaks, sketchy materials, among other issues. Bostonians today reap the benefits of this mega project. It has truly connected two parts of the city, making the city more walkable, appealing, and providing a congregation spot for arts and activities. It is kind of wild to walk down this beautiful park and think, wow, there's a highway underneath me right now. The Greenway has become a highlight of downtown Boston, so take your time while walking through here and explore the different activities along the Greenway as you make your way to the Boston Tea Party Ships and Museum. The Boston Tea Party Ships and Museum could be considered a must-do. Here, you can learn more about one of the most famous events in American history. But let's be honest, what we all really want to do while at the Boston Tea Party Ships and Museum is throw tea overboard, and you'll have the opportunity to do that. It makes for a great picture. Also, this video is posting just over 250 years since the actual Boston Tea Party, which is pretty cool. The good news is that the Waterfront Museum also provides an interactive deep dive into what actually went down with the real Boston Tea Party. So in addition to getting to throw tea overboard, which is fun, you can gain insight into how the events of the Boston Tea Party occurred. It's a great learning experience. And for your planning purposes, note that tours usually last about 1 hour. After you've thrown tea into the harbor, if you've got enough energy left in the tank, I recommend you walk back through the Boston Common and take a stroll through the Boston Public Garden. The Boston Public Garden is a wonderful green space that features walkable pathways, lush trees, blooming plants, and a lagoon. It's such a well-kept and well-maintained area, and you can expect some live music here as well. The Public Garden was the first public botanical garden in America. Depending on what time of year you visit, you can take in or maybe even ride on one of the swan boats, and don't forget to stop by the Make Way for Ducklings statue. You'll probably be hungry after your stroll through the Public Garden. From here, find a place to eat based on whatever you're craving. Boston has so many food options. If you want seafood, head to the Boston Sail-Off, where you can get great food at a reasonable price, and you don't have to make any reservations. It's only walk-ins. Just about any Italian place in the North End is going to be great, and there are some great pizza places in this area as well that maybe aren't as upscale as some of the Italian restaurants in the North End. Go with what you're feeling. It's hard to go wrong anywhere in this area. So this concludes my video on how you should spend a day in Boston if you're pressed for time or just here for a single day. If you want to learn more about Boston, whether you're visiting the city or moving to the area, subscribe for similar videos. If I missed any important activities that you would recommend to someone who has one day to spend in Boston, or if you would cut anything from this list, please let me know in the comments, and please like the video if you enjoyed.